Welcome to Soundtrack to My Life, where today I've been joined by the indefinable Joe Jackson. Do you like that? Was that a good one?
It'll do.
It'll do. Well, because you are. It's kind of like nobody can put you in a box. Nobody can turn around and go, he does this kind of music or he does that kind of music.
So I'm told, yeah. I mean, to me, I'm just doing what comes naturally, you know.
But the purpose behind it, is it to challenge you? Is it to challenge the critics? Is it to challenge the fans? Is it?
There's no purpose that I'm aware of.
No?
It's just, you know, I think I'm just by nature quite eclectic, and I think Oscar Wilde said one should do as one's nature dictates.
Yeah. And have you always been that way?
Yeah. Yeah, ever since I was, when I first started getting seriously interested in music, I was probably 11 or 12, and I was, as a kid, really big fan of the Beatles and all that, but then by the time I was 12 or 13, I was crazy about Beethoven. Beethoven was my favorite music.
So then you went to the Royal Academy of Music.
Yeah.
How did you get your place?
I got more or less a scholarship. I was the only kid in my school ever to get not only an A level but an S level in music, and as a result of that I got a grant to go to the Royal Academy. And of course I was going to go to the Royal Academy of Music for 3 years rather than have to go out and work in a factory or something.
Yeah.
It was very exciting at first. After a while I was disillusioned with it because I was more interested in playing in rock bands and doing other things.
So where did that come from? Where did the love of rock bands come from? And by going to the Royal Academy as well, how did you find that? Did you find it was a weird dichotomy between the two?
No, not really, because in some ways, I suppose, but really when it comes down to it, it's all music. And we all live in the same world. I mean, so-called classical musicians, all the ones I've ever met, listen to rock music and all kinds of music.
And how has having that education helped you, do you think, throughout your career?
I think it's good to have a foundation of solid technique under you. I think it enables you to do new things with more confidence, and I think you're less limited.
And was it quite a creative place to be at the time?
The Academy? I suppose. I mean, this is a long time ago, mind you.
Yeah.
I always felt like a bit of a misfit there, anyway.
Why?
Because I really couldn't see myself in some sort of career in the classical music world. People used to look at me as though I might have a bomb under my jacket or something. You know, I just felt like this wasn't my place.
What the hell is wrong with you tonight? I can't seem to say or do the right thing. Wanted to be sure you're feeling right. Wanted to be sure we want the same thing. She said, I don't believe it. You can't possibly mean it. Don't we all want the same thing? Don't we? Well, who said anything about love? No, not love, she said. Don't you know that it's different for girls? Don't give me. No, not love, she said. Don't you know that it's different for girls? You're all the same. Mama always told me, save yourself. Take a little time and find the right girl. Then again, don't end up on the shelf. Logical advice gets you in a whirl. I know a lot of things that you don't. You wanna hear some? She said, just give me something she said. Don't you know that it's different for girls? Don't get me. No, not love, she said. Don't you know that it's different for girls? You're all the same. She said, who said anything about? Oh, not love, she said. Don't you know that it's different for girls? Don't get me. No, not love, she said. Don't you know that it's different for girls? Don't get me. No, not love, she said. Don't you know that it's different for girls? You're all the same.
Do you remember hearing Is She Really Going Out With Him on the radio for the first time?
Yeah, it was really weird.
What
It sounded like someone else.
really?
You know, it didn't register that it was me. Very odd. And I also remember the first time my mother heard it, there's a line that says, I'm staring out the window while my coffee goes cold. And she says, you don't drink coffee.
Is that kind of success, is it slightly unnerving or is it wonderful? How does it feel?
Well, both. Yeah, I mean...
In what ways, both?
Well, I mean, everyone wants to be loved, you know, everyone likes applause. But not everyone wants to be sort of famous or whatever for the sake of it, which I don't particularly. I think that the whole kind of celebrity business is kind of a sickness. I don't like it at all. So it is a sort of double-edged sword in a way. I mean, to a certain extent, yeah, you know, you want people to hear your work and to hopefully respond to it in some way and like it and buy the records and so on. But there are other sides of it that are just a bit surreal and weird and, you know, challenging to one's dignity as a human being, shall we say.
Why do you think we are such a celebrity-obsessed culture at the moment?
Well, you tell me. Do you know? I don't know. It's just weird, I think.
Meshed across the window hides the lines, but nothing hides the colors of the lights that shine. Electricity so fine, look and dry your eyes. We so tired of all the darkness in our lives, and all our angry words to say can come alive. Get into a car and drive to the other side. To the night, into the light. Step it out into the night, into the light. taxi turned to me and smiled. We'll be there in just a while. If you follow into the night, into the light, you'll be stepping out into the light, into the light.
Didn't your bandmates come up with Joe as well too? That's not the name you were born with, is it?
No, I was christened David, and Joe was a nickname that came about for various reasons and sort of stuck, and it just seemed to sound, you know, more interesting, Joe Jackson. Because it seemed like, as a kid, almost every bloke I knew was called Dave. You know, so it was a bit boring, really. It's still a bit like that, isn't it?
Tell me what it was like when in the late 70s punk came through and all that kind of stuff. Did you find that incredibly inspiring?
I did, I loved it. I went to see The Damned on their first tour. I think it was the first punk gig in Portsmouth, really. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I didn't take it seriously for a second, but I loved it.
What do you mean you didn't take it seriously?
Well, it was just sort of like a cartoon, really, in a way. It was so trashy and so over the top, and I just thought it was brilliant. And then I realised that I mean, I really loved The Clash, who were a lot more serious about what they were doing, and so there was a more serious side to it, I guess, as well. You know, it was all about playing in kind of sweaty little places and very, very stripped down to kind of raw essentials. I mean, even if some of the musicians could barely knew how to tune a guitar, let alone play it. But that didn't bother me, even though I was a recent graduate of the Royal Academy of Music.
Yeah.
I mean, I was way overqualified for punk.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the same time, I think that sometimes people get a bit too hung up on ideas of authenticity. You know, like you went to music college, so you can't be a punk. Well, okay, fine. But, I mean, I also come from quite a poor working class background, whereas someone like Joe Strummer, you know, was the son of a diplomat, so who's the real punk? You know, it's just stupid, really,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
What's the best gig you've ever been to?
Well, I do remember going to an orchestral concert of music by Beethoven with my dad when I was about 12,
Yeah.
and being absolutely blown away with it.
Yeah.
And at one point I was like stamping my foot, and some old ladies in front of me turned around and glared at me and went, shh, you know, like this. And I thought, God, you know, why aren't people dancing in the aisles? The music was so fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was a bit of an odd kid, I suppose. But I don't know, I mean, I feel like I'm very lucky to have seen a lot of great artists perform live who are no longer around, you know, like Bob Marley and Leonard Bernstein conducting the New York Philharmonic.
Yeah.
Incredible. So, you know, Count Basie
Yeah.
playing with his band. So some real giants from various different genres of music that I've seen. So I think you could put a short list together out of some of those things, I
Yeah,
guess.
because that's one of the things you always seem to draw on these different genres. You know, the Cole Porter.
I love the classic songwriters.
Why? What is it about
Because
them?
they're great songs. You know, they're just brilliant songs. With great melodies, sophistication, wit and humor. You know, class, soul, and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, what more do you want?
Is there anybody going to listen to my story? All about the girl who came to you don't regret a single day. Oh, girl, girl. When I think of all the times I tried so hard to leave her, she will turn to me and start to cry. And she promises the earth to me, and I believe her. After all this time, I don't know why. Oh, girl, girl. She's the kind of girl who puts you down when friends are there. You feel a fool. When you say she's looking good, she acts as if it's understood. She's cool. Oh, oh, girl. Was she told when she was young that pain would lead to pleasure? Did she understand it when they said that a man must break his back to earn his day of leisure? Will she still believe it when he's dead? Oh, girl,
When I do a cover version of anything, it's usually because it suits my voice in some odd kind of way, and because I can do it in a way that's different to the original. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, who wants to compete with John Lennon?
Yeah. But do you find yourself kind of going into the studio and going, okay, today I'm going to make this kind of album. I'm going to be influenced by Cole Porter and Gershwin, and
No,
or do you? How does the process happen?
It's all very mysterious, and you know, I'm just open to a lot of different influences, and they all go in and sort of get cooked in a pot, and hopefully into something tasty. And if you tell me, if you ask me afterwards which ingredient it is that makes it taste particularly good, I really couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I don't really think in that way, and I don't think any artist really does.
No.
You know, when you're trying to write something, you're thinking about melody, harmony, rhythm, chords, lyrics. You know, you're trying to create something. You're not thinking where does it fit on the sort of map of musical genres. That'd be the last thing I would think about. You're working with things that are very intangible. I mean, if you like a carpenter, you know what you're working with. You can feel it. When you're working with music, it's something that is just sort of as intangible as the air that you breathe. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone really knows where ideas come from.
Yeah.
There's a huge element of mystery to it, and even as an artist yourself, I mean, sometimes I've written a song and I look back and think, how the hell did I do that? I don't really know how I did it. And I have no guarantee that I'll ever be able to write another song. And I think this is one of the reasons why some artists are neurotic, you know, because it's just such a weird thing to sort of pin your life on in a way. It's so kind of ephemeral.
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot of artists are either neurotic or they get really into drugs or whatever. It has something to do with that, I think.
Tell me a bit about Symphony No. 1, because you
Yeah.
won a Grammy for that, right?
Yeah, I did. I won a Grammy. I was absolutely astonished because this was a piece that is something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. It's a symphony, not for an orchestra, but using electronic instruments, using electric guitar and so on. And I thought that this would almost certainly maybe sell, 8 copies or something, including one to my mum. You know what I mean? So when I won a Grammy, I actually think it's one of my most successful projects because I got a pool of tremendous musicians to play on it who really were enthusiastic about it, and I'm proud of the composition and the fact that it won a Grammy on top of it. It's all like way beyond anything I expected.
Yeah. When did you move to New York? And what made you move to New York?
There isn't really one date that I moved to New York. I started going to New York quite regularly to do gigs and so on in 1979. And I spent a few months there in '82, recorded an album there, Night and Day. And after being on the road for a year, and having no fixed abode, I'm basically living out of a suitcase on tour for a year. At the end of it, I just thought, you know what, instead of going back to England, I'm going to go and live in New York for a while, see what happens. And then it became more or less my home base for nearly 20 years on and off.
And what do you love about the city?
Well, I really loved it 20 years ago. I don't like it so much now. I think it's all a bit too sort of sanitized now. And then there was 9/11, which I think, and I was there on that day.
You were? Where were you?
In bed when it
Really?
actually happened. I heard one of the planes going overhead, right over my house. I didn't actually see it hit, but I was there, and that was a terrifying experience. And anything could have happened after that somehow. I mean, I think there was a sense of the city could go in any number of different directions, and the direction it went in was, electing a billionaire businessman as mayor and trying to resurrect the economy by any means necessary. And I think really the city has lost a lot of its soul, and a lot of people feel the same way. I mean, I talk to people about this all the time. But it's still New York. It still has some great things about it. And I guess we'll see what happens, if it's a phase or what.
And then you left New York, and when did you move to Berlin?
I was living in London for nearly 3 years,
Okay.
until about a year ago, and I moved to Berlin. Yeah.
And why did you choose Berlin, and what is it about that city that you love?
I like the sense of freedom that it has, which it has much more than London, I think. And it's a big city with a very relaxed flavour somehow. And also a very creative city, I think, partly because it's cheap to live there, so you've got all sorts of people coming there and just doing stuff that is harder to do in a place like London or New York, which is, where it's just so expensive and every square inch is kind of accounted for,
Yeah.
Berlin still has this freer, more chaotic or anarchic sort of flavour.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you for performing, and thank you for chatting to me. Nice to meet you.
thanks.
Thank you.
I know you think that I protest too much. I'm like a diva with a tragic touch. But if I have to hide from the pouring sun, it has to be alright. And I can have my pride, but I'll turn and run. When a fool would stand and fight, and if I try hard enough to do or die, and push and shove, I know that I would be too tough to fall in love. was always thin. So if I wanna cry in the burning rain, don't worry, I'll survive. But even when you're high, I can feel your pain. That's what I call being alive. So if I fall, I'll get back up. There'll be tears and blood and stuff. Still I stand tall, but not too tough. Too tough to fall in love. And I can see your point of view, but I can't see a way to be tough too. Tough too. You know I hate it when you talk this way. 'Cause you don't listen to a word you say. And it took a lot of time to grow your shell. Maybe enough's enough, and I could tell you why you should go to hell. But I don't want to be that tough. Still, if I try hard enough,